Welcome to the Pro Hockey Alumni Podcast, the home of behind-the-scenes interviews, stories, and memories that celebrate the heritage of the great game of hockey. The Pro Hockey Alumni Podcast is hosted by Mark Willand. One of my all-time favorite players and people in hockey is my good friend, the magician, Andre Lacroix, and he's our guest today in the Pro Hockey Alumni Podcast. Andre, of course, was the all-time leading scorer in the World Hockey Association, with 798 points in just 551 games. Amazingly, he averaged nearly an assist per game throughout his entire WHA career. After a 147-point season with the San Diego Mariners in 1974-75, Andre was named the French-Canadian Athlete of the Year, besting Guy Lafleur, Marcel, Dionne, and Perreault, among others, for that great honor. Andre also had the distinction of playing for 5 different WHA franchises without ever being traded during his 7 years in the Rebel League. And that journey, of course, began as a Philadelphia Blazer in 1972 and ended as a New England Whaler in 1979. Prior to joining the WHA, Andre was a dominant player in the OHA with the Peterborough Petes and in the AHL with the Quebec Aces. He joined the NHL Philadelphia Flyers in 1967-68 and was twice the leading scorer for the Flyers before being traded to the Chicago Blackhawks in 1971. After his career concluded in 1980, Andre embarked on a successful TV and radio broadcasting career with the Hartford Whalers, where he teamed with legendary radio broadcaster Chuck Caden, a very, very popular duo in the Connecticut area. Andre was also a huge part of the Hartford hockey community. Personally, I spent a lot of time with Andre, Gordie Howe, Mike Visor, Doug Roberts, Gary Swain, and many more Whalers alumni as we barnstormed through Connecticut to play hockey games for charity. Now residing in Ohio, Andre remains one of the most popular figures in Hartford hockey circles and every other stop along the way of his 60-year hockey journey. We could have talked for hours with Andre, and perhaps we'll do that soon. But for now, here's a great, honest, as always, discussion with a true hockey legend. This episode of the PHA podcast is sponsored by HockeyTournaments.com. If you're looking to play in a tournament or just list your tournament, head over to HockeyTournaments.com. Also, for great classic hockey online, check out these Facebook pages: WHA Hockey, Hartford Whaler Nation, the official Boston Bruins alumni, and Pro Hockey Alumni. Well, we're back with the podcast with my good friend, Andre Lacroix. Andre, thanks for being with us today.
Mark, my pleasure. It's been too long.
Absolutely. Andre, as he knows, and anybody who knows me knows, one of my favorite players and people in hockey of all time. Had an opportunity to spend some time with him during the Hartford days. And in Hartford, obviously, Andre had his impact in the community, as a broadcaster, as a player. But one thing that kind of flies under the radar sometimes is the great success he had as a coach at Trinity College. He also went on to coach at a variety of different levels very successfully in California and in Ohio. And we receive a lot of positive feedback about from players who played for you during those years as a coach. Can you talk a little bit about your coaching philosophy? And it must be very gratifying for you to get such positive feedback from your former players.
Well, I think what helped a lot is that when I retired with the Whalers, I got the opportunity to coach with a great coach at Trinity College, John Dunham. Not just a great coach, but also a great guy. And I coached with him for about, 6-7 years at least. And that gave me an opportunity to help coach at the college level, which, to me, that's the step that the kids get ready to hopefully maybe play pro if they can. If not, they're just happy to play college hockey. And we've had a lot of success there. Then I also coach a lot of youth hockey program. I coach high school hockey. And I always tell the kids, every level that I coach, I said, I want you to get ready for the next level. I want you to make sure that you work as hard. Don't work for this year. work for next year. And so I've had a lot of success coaching at the youth level and at the high school level. And I think I was so happy to be able to give something back, to the community.
Andre, switching gears for a moment, recently a former teammate of yours, John McKenzie, passed away. You played with John in the first year of the WHA in '72 with the Philadelphia Blazers, and you played with him in the last year of the WHA with the New England Whalers. What are your memories of Johnny Pie McKenzie?
Well, Pie was just one of those guys that you hate him when you played against him, and you just love him when you played with him. And he always had a smile on his face. And then if you want a teammate that go to bat for you on the ice, you want Pie McKenzie. And then he was always at the right place at the right time. He always did the little things right. Size was no factor to Pie McKenzie. And Johnny also always had time for the fans, which I was always impressed with that, because this is something that it misses today that we've had in the past. And players like Johnny McKenzie, Gordie Howe, they always had time for the fans. And I think Johnny will always be remembered not just for a great hockey player, but also for a great person who always knew where he came from and always had time to sign an autograph for whoever wanted it.
Well said, Andre. You mentioned Gordie Howe, and when I think of Gordie Howe and Andre Lacroix, I think of some of the great days of my early career when we would travel around Connecticut playing charity games with the Hartford Whalers alumni.
Well, I miss those days, to be honest with you. And the reason I miss it is because we had fun. We raised money for charity. And then, you miss not playing hockey. Doesn't matter what level it's at. I'm 73 years old now, and I play every Sunday morning at 7 o'clock. And year-round, I have a group of 20, 25 people. Every Sunday morning, we meet for an hour and a half, and we play. And that keeps me in shape. And also, it keeps me involved in the game as well a little bit. It's funny, even at this age, we play with a group of 40 and over. I still teach.
Right.
Every once in a while, I'll stop the play and tell them, next time you try this, you try that. You just don't want to forget that. And I think what happened when we were playing in the alumni games, I think that the team were playing a lot of times against, high school or college coaches. There were a lot of kids watching. And I think that you just don't want to embarrass yourself. You just want to go out there and put a good show on for everybody.
Andre, looking back at your career, putting up remarkable numbers as leading scorer in the OHA with Peterborough twice, dominating offensively for the Quebec Aces, the American Hockey League, making a huge impact when you finally get to the NHL, top scorer with the Philadelphia Flyers for 2 seasons. Then you're traded. The Flyers have a philosophical shift. They're going with bigger, more physical players. They trade you the Chicago Blackhawks. That is not a great year for you, not a great fit with that team, but it also kind of, in a way, leads you to your journey in the World Hockey Association.
Well, I think what happened was I was with the Flyers, and then when I got traded to the Blackhawks, like you said, Mark, it didn't turn out too good for me, because as soon as I got to Chicago, I got to sit down with Dick Martin and Brian Campbell, which I knew beforehand, and they told me, they said, Henri, be careful, because the reason they brought you is to play with Bobby, and they've tried everything and nothing has worked. And I said, okay, thank you very much, and what happened is that I had to change my style of hockey to play with Bobby, and you cannot do that. You need to play your own game, and I couldn't play my own game. And what happened was, near the end of the season, I was on my last year of my contract, and I received a phone call from an attorney from Philadelphia who was going to buy a franchise in the WHA. And he said to me, Henri, I don't know what you're making, but he said, I would like you to come back to Philadelphia. I've watched you play for the Flyers for 3 years. I would like you to come back to Philadelphia and join our team. And he said, I don't know what you're making, but he said, I'll double your salary and give you a 5-year deal. And I said, I'm gone. And then what happened is Chicago never had any interest at that point, I don't believe, to offer me a contract. But when they found out that I might be going to the WHA, they offered me a contract. And obviously I didn't take it because I didn't want to go through another year like I did the previous year. And I came back to the Philadelphia with the Blazers.
It was a... did you sign with the Blazers prior to Bobby Hull jumping leagues?
No. But what happened is Bobby's the one that convinced me to jump league, basically. Bobby was just a great teammate. I mean, Bobby was like from the old school. He was just like Gordie Howe. He signed every autograph. I mean, it got to be the point where when I was with the Blackhawks, every time we were on the road and we had a bus picking us up after the game, the bus had to start going because otherwise Bobby wouldn't get on the bus. He just didn't want to say no for an autograph.
Right.
And Bobby had told me that he was going to sign with Winnipeg, in the WHA. And I said, well, if Bobby Hull jumps league, it's good for anybody. And because Bobby was, I tell everybody, I said, when I played with Bobby Hull in Chicago, Bobby Hull was as popular or as big as Michael Jordan was in Chicago.
Right.
Because he was the man. He was the man, and in many ways, off the ice and on the ice. And I said, if one of the best hockey players in the National Hockey League is jumping league, he knows something. So I said, I can't go wrong. If Bobby goes wrong, then we're all in trouble. And that's when I think being in Chicago with Bobby convinced me a lot to switch to jump league.
Interesting. So hey, maybe there was a positive in that trade to Chicago in the end, because a couple of guys were in your situation. I mentioned Chris Boardlow, who jumped to Winnipeg, Brian Campbell, who went with you to Philadelphia. So some real good talent.
Excuse me for a second. You see, because they were in the same boat I was in Chicago, because Tommy Ray was doing the same thing. Tommy Ivan and Billy Ray was doing the same thing to them as they were doing to me. They tried to, make us play with Bobby. If it didn't work, then we'd pay the price for it. So that's why I think all of the three of us didn't hesitate to jump late.
Well, it was a good thing that you did. That Philadelphia Blazers team, obviously things didn't work out in Philadelphia for the Blazers franchise, but the team had a pretty good talent level. Had yourself, Danny Lawson, Pye McKenzie, Ron Plum, Bernie Perreault, of course. Team got off to a little bit of a slow start on the ice that year, then picked it up and ended up having a winning season, as I recall. What are your reflections of year one at WHA as a Philadelphia Blazer? Because you took right off and you really clicked with Danny Lawson.
Yes, I think, you can't forget the first home game. We go on the ice. We're all excited to play our first home game. That never happened because the Zamboni took a bunch of ice out, and then they had to cancel the game. And poor Derek Sanderson, was trying to calm the people down, and the organization had made a mistake of giving everyone came in an orange puck with the Blazers logo on it, and the people were firing puck at Derek Sanderson on the ice. So that was my first experience, with the WHA in Philadelphia. But playing with Danny Lawson was just a pleasure. And the reason it was a pleasure, because as a centerman, you want to play with somebody that's got speed, that will stay on the side of the ice. And when you talk to him, you say to him, Danny, you stay open, I'll find you, I'll get you the puck. And Danny knew exactly that I was the one that should handle the puck, and he's the one that could score the goals. And that was just a super combination, Danny Lawson and I. And like you said, we had a pretty good team, to be honest with you. It's just that I wish more people in Philadelphia would believe in us at the time. Don't forget, we're playing at Civic Center, which was not a great rink. At the time, the Spectrum wouldn't give us any dates to play there. So we were in a tough shape, really, to be successful in Philadelphia. And it was still a Flyers town. And I'm not sure that Philadelphia is not New York. I don't think Philadelphia could support two pro hockey teams.
But you really took control of your career more so than any player probably ever. You played on, I think, 6 different teams in the WHA. You never got traded. And so when the Philadelphia Blazers season concludes at the end of the year, the franchise decides to move to Vancouver. Of course, with the exchange rate, you've got a clause in there that says you don't have to. And then you sign with the Golden Blaze, as it turns out. But that, too, along with the New Jersey Knights, ends up being kind of a rocky franchise to step into.
Well, you see, what happened is, when I jumped to the WHA, I started to look at myself and I said, wait a minute. I've had some pretty good years in junior with the Petes in Peterborough. I won the MVP 2 years in a row. I had good year in Quebec City when I was my first year pro, when I played before I went to the Flyers. When I went to the Flyers, I was leading the league in scoring in the American Hockey League with 6 hat tricks in one season. And I was up like 25 points in scoring. I think Simon Olette beat me when I went to the Flyers. I missed like the last 17 games. I think he beat me the last week of the season. And I think, I knew I could play in the NHL. I just want somebody to believe in my skills and give me a chance to do my thing and put me with the right people. That's what happened with the Blazers. And then with the reason I decided to go to New York at the time, I kept saying to myself, I was a free agent. That's one thing that I did. When I signed with the WHA, every team I signed with, I became a free agent. If the team moved, if the team changed ownership, if the team changed coach, I became a free agent. So I was never traded. The reason the league sent Ronnie Ward to Vancouver from New York, obviously because they want to save face, which I don't blame them. I was never traded for Ronnie Ward.
Right.
And then I had a good season with the New York team. We end up in Cherry, New Jersey, which was, another experience by itself.
Right.
I mean, when you somebody helped him into the rink in New Jersey on the school bus with his equipment on, like the youth hockey, and he's carrying his skates and his stick over his shoulder, that's hockey, And and there was a dip at center ice in that rink in New Jersey, if you remember. I mean, if you break a pass, the pass could just slide right over the guy. I mean, it was unbelievable. But most of us live in the West Orange area because we're playing in New York. So we're going by bus to the game, and after the game, a bus would take us back home. And I didn't have a clue what was going to happen after that season.
Right.
And then, obviously end up in San Diego, which was a great move, for me to go there.
That was just a tremendous franchise move from really a tough situation in New Jersey to the great climate and great, potential opportunity in San Diego. You team up, right there in that first year, 74-75, you pick up 106 assists. Probably It was your most productive season of all time. Now, I often think about that season too. Now, you played for Team Canada, of course. That's 74 in the fall. I would wonder, was that a catalyst in getting? I mean, were you ultra prepared for that season physically to be able to go to the Team Canada training camp, play at a high level internationally, and then get right into the regular season with the Mariners?
Yes, I think I think we all were. I believe what happened with Team Canada 74. I think if we would have concentrated more on playing hockey instead of trying to be physical with the Russian, I think we would have probably have a better show, to be honest with you. I think we thought we could slow them down by, being physical, but they were too good of a hockey team to play that way. To beat them, you need to play them at their game, which was, good hockey, and we didn't do that. But then, when I came back from Russia, I remember going back to San Diego to start my season, and the coach told me, he said, take a couple of weeks off, before. I said, no, I want to get right back on the ice. Ronnie Ingram was our great coach.
Right.
I said, no, I want to get back right on the ice because I want to be with my teammates. I want to make sure that we work on whatever system you want to work on. I wanted to be part of it. But besides that, I didn't want to be away from them. couldn't wait to get back on the ice. And what I had to be careful with, because I remember my best weight to play hockey in those days was about 168, 169. And it's funny, Mark, because if I was 172, I could tell the difference before I even got on the scale.
Mm-hmm.
And I really kept myself in really good shape, because I didn't want people, when you play pro for so many years, you have some pride, and you want to make sure that the people don't think that the year before was a fluke. And it was so important for me to go to San Diego and have a great year, because everybody said, well, that hockey will never go in that climate. There's no way, And personally, it was my goal to prove them wrong. And I prepared myself in San Diego the same way as I prepared myself in Philadelphia. I didn't prepare myself any different, except that I knew that I could enjoy the sun every day.
Right. Now, Wayne Rivers was a different type of player than Danny Lawson was in Philadelphia, but you really clicked with him. In that 74-75 season, he explodes for 54 goals, by far and away a career high for him.
Except Danny was quicker, faster than Wayne, than Mooner. And also, we had a pretty good left winger, too. Vick Stasiak was a pretty good left winger, too.
Right.
And Wayne Rivers was just a normal goal scorer. You give the puck, he knew what the net was. He was just a great goal scorer, great two-way hockey player, good back checker as well. So I was fortunate, because I always had good wingers to play with. And there's no way in the world that they would have had the success that I had unless I had the wingers that complement what I was doing on the ice. So I had a lot of communication with the players I played with. And one thing I did is I made sure when in the locker room, I dressed beside them, because I want to make sure we could talk between periods. I believe that we could talk before practice. We went on the ice. So the fact that you're sitting by each other in the locker room, it means a lot, because that you can work on plays that you can talk about things you're going to do, and you go on the ice and you do them. So I never took it for granted that, hey, you just go on the ice and play your game and things will happen. I just didn't believe in that. I believe that you need to get ready before you go on the ice.
Unfortunately, despite having a solid team on the ice and an increased fan base, the Mariners had persistent financial problems, particularly in 75-76, where the team often played without paychecks. Ultimately, the franchise was spared for a year by none other than McDonald's founder Ray Kroc. Can you think back at those times, and pretty unsettling times, where the franchise seemed to always be on the verge of folding?
Well, what happened, Mark, is a year before Ray Kroc bought the team, the league took over. They made us the players like owners of the team, technically. We were running the team with Ron Ingram, and they said, listen, whatever gate is coming in, we'll split among you guys, that will get you whatever money, but either you do that or we stop the franchise. So we want to keep it going. And we were doing pretty good crowd in San Diego as well. But there's a good story after that, because, I became a free agent after that because of my contract. And then when Ray Kroc bought the team, I received a phone call from Buzzy Babasi inviting me to San Diego. I was living in Philadelphia at the time. He said, to sign a contract. And I said, okay. And I went to San Diego. And Buzzy I tried to get a franchise, McDonald's franchise in my contract. And Buzzy said, absolutely not. He said, that's Jackson is not here, because Reggie wanted a franchise. And he said, Ray Kroc won't do that. So when I negotiated with Buzzy was a nice man. And he was trying to obviously lower my salary down. And he said, well, my baseball player, when they make that kind of money, at the time you offered me $150,000 a year. That was in 1974. I said, I'm making that now plus bonuses. I was making about $20,000 in bonuses. And he said, well, when my baseball players make that kind of money, they don't have bonuses. I said, that's why I play hockey. And then I said, at one point, he said, I'll make you an offer. And in 1974, he made me an offer of $175,000 a year for 6 years with a personal guarantee from Mr. Kroc. So I called my attorney, because I negotiated my own contract. So I called my attorney in New Jersey. I said, "Are you sitting down, Richard?" And I told him, he said, because in those days there was no computer, everything was faxed. And I said, "Guess what?" I said, "Here's the deal." He said, "Bring it down right now." I said, "I will." And then that's how I ended up, And then it's funny because after that, Vick decided he didn't like hockey a year later. And every team I've been with after that, they always honored my contract, and Vick never had to pay a penny.
Oh, interesting.
Everything paid. Yeah. Even the Whalers at the end.
After the Mariners' demise, Andre, you signed. I was glad to see that you signed with the Houston Aeros, a team that had just lost the House, but also had a lot of good young hockey players: Terry Ruskowski, Rich Preston, John Tonelli, Scott Campbell, Morris Lukowicz. Talk a little bit about your decision to sign with the Aeros and how that season played out for you.
The reason I chose Houston, because at the time, Gordy, Mark, and Marty had gone to Hartford. And then Bill Dineen was a coach, and I had so much respect for Bill Dineen. Great coach, great human being. And I always felt like if I had a chance to play for somebody, it would be Bill Dineen. And when the opportunity came up to play for him, and the fact that the House had gone to Hartford, it was a good situation for me to go there because they still had the young talent there. They still had Terry Ruskowski, Rich Preston, all those guys. And I said we could have a very good team. And we did have a good season. And I was really happy that I made that decision because I played with the men I wanted to play for, and I played with some great teammates there as well.
Once again, bad luck strikes in your career.
I had a lot of those, by the way, with teams I played for.
Yeah, it did. Nothing personal, I guess, because you always produced. And again, you had a great year, 77 assists that year with the Houston, 113 points. And then you enter our world in New England in the off season. The Aeros sold all the players to Winnipeg once again. Your ability to kind of foresee these type of things works out for you. You're not forced to go to Winnipeg. You're a free agent again, and you join Bill Dineen again, and you become a New England Whaler in 1978. Talk a little bit about that decision.
Well, there were a couple of reasons why I went to Hartford. One of the reasons was Bill Dineen, and the other reason was Howard Baldwin. Because when I first came with the Flyers in 1967, Howard was the ticket manager for the Flyers. So I got to know Howard pretty well. And I always had a lot of respect for Howard for what he's done, with hockey as far as the WHA and the teams he was with. So I figured, if I have a chance to play with Bill Dineen and I can reunite with Howard Baldwin in Hartford, that could be a great situation for me. And at the same time, I knew that, Gordy, Mark, and Marty were still in Hartford. So I said it was a win-win situation for me to come to Hartford. And so at that point, there were not too many teams. There were not too many teams left. I almost,
right.
By every year that I became a free agent, I thought I was making the right decision. I always thought that every team I picked, from the time I picked the Blazers in Philadelphia, I said, good, I'm going to finish my career in Philadelphia. When I went to New York, I said, there has to be a team in New York, otherwise there won't be a league. Then when I went to Houston, to San Diego, then I said, hey, who wouldn't want to play in that kind of weather? This
right.
is the best. When you go to Minnesota, you don't have to live there. You go back to San Diego.
Right.
And then when I went to Houston, I figured, hey, the oil company, they won championship. This is going to be my last stop. And then when I went to Hartford, I said, well, the insurance company owned the team. Can't be wrong. So
right.
I always try to choose a team for the right reason, but they still folded, except the way.
Right.
But then I met a lot of good people like you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you certainly had a big. You met a lot of people in Hartford. I mean, you were such a big part of the community as a player, in your business, coaching, alumni, your charity, just a huge part of the community, well loved. And I think I'll tell you that when I post something online about Chuck Caden and Andre Lacroix and the memories people come back of that duo, you and Chuck had great chemistry and did a great job on the radio and brought Whalers hockey to people with 50,000 watts and 1080 WTIC, not only to people in Hartford, but all around the United States. Talk a little bit about working with Chuck and those days as a Whaler broadcaster.
Well, Chuck's the best. I mean, I worked with Chuck for 8-10 years, and even when Chuck moved to North Carolina, we talked at one point. We tried to get back together in North Carolina, because I remember one time my daughter was living in North Carolina, and every time I went to visit her, I would go see Chuck and would talk. And then at one point, Jimmy Rutherford was the manager of the team, and I knew Jimmy, and I went to talk to him because Chuck had asked me to, if you're interested, go talk to Jimmy, see what happened. Because I would have loved to move back to North Carolina, to be honest with you, to continue to do the radio with Chuck. And Jimmy just said, we don't have anything in the budget for that. He said it's not going to happen. But Chuck and I tried because we had such a great combination, the two of us. Chuck was like the good cop, I was the bad cop.
Right.
Because I always said it the way it was. If the Whalers played bad, I said it. If they played well, I said it. Because I knew the people would listen to us, and if they listened to us, I want them to try to visualize what I was telling them. So I didn't want to find excuses. Because too many people that do games today, they're such homers, it's not even fun listening to them.
I agree.
So, and that's why Chuck and I got along so well, because I think, I'm surprised I last that long, because I thought that the Whalers at some point might say, either you change. And I think that's what happened at the end, by the way, Mark. The reason I can do the Whalers at the end on the radio is because some of the players complained that I was too negative on the radio, and they decided to go in a different direction.
Well, I think that they were, I recall that very vividly, obviously we had an ownership change. That changed the entire culture of the organization with the Whalers. I don't think they ever really recovered from that. And they were looking for cheerleaders to be the color people. And the thing about you is, once in a while you get under a player's skin. You talk about good cop, bad cop, and that's very accurate, because Chuck was able to play it straight and do his thing well. And you were able to point out things that were positive and things that were negative. And that, as a listener, gave you a real good idea of what was happening on the ice.
I think Chuck loved the fact that I would disagree with him at times on the air, because he had to say it the way it was, and I would bring a different aspect of the game that it happened. So Chuck liked that, because he said that's what the fans want to hear. They want to hear two different views of what happened on the ice. So I think that there were so many good times in Hartford, to be honest with you, and I agree with you completely. I think at the end they were looking for cheerleaders that would come and say, listen, we need to be positive about this. But I asked them, when they decided that I was not going to do the radio again, I remember asking them, I said, could you give me one reason why I shouldn't be doing it? Can you show me one letter that you received that was negative about what I said on the air? Could you tell me one phone call you received about something I said on the air that was wrong? And they couldn't come up with anything. So I said, obviously, you're giving in to some of the players that don't like the fact that they're being not criticized, but telling the mistake they made on the ice. I would not criticize the players for what he did. I would just say, well, if you would have back checked, for example, you could have stopped him, that kind of thing. I was saying, because I knew that a lot of people would watch the game on TV, but turn the sound off and listen to Chuck and I.
Right.
So I want them to make sure that what I was saying is what they saw on TV. So that's why miss Chuck a lot because he and I, we got along very well during the radio, and we made a great team together.
Absolutely, and you can certainly see by the fans' reaction, even today, all those years later, they really appreciated that, and I know I did as a fan, and as an employee too. It was a lot less fun on game nights when you weren't there, that's for sure. And it was always, you're always good for a laugh. You always crack me up and remind me how much better looking my wife was than me, and it was always fun. I saw a recent.
She's a great lady.
Absolutely, I agree. The recent.
With you that long, she has to be great. Okay.
Excuse me.
I said to stay with you that long, she has to be great.
She has to be something special. I would agree with that 100%, and I remind myself of that every day. You recently had an appearance with Bernie Perreault, I believe, this past weekend. I'm a little curious. You've had a long time rapport with Bernie as a teammate and as a friend. You talk a little bit about your friendship with Bernie Perreault.
Well, Bernie and I go back. When I was playing for the Petes in Peterborough, Bernie was playing for Niagara Falls. And then we played for the Flyers together. And for some reason, we always, had a good relationship, the two of us. And then, obviously, I went my own way. And Bernie, went his own way as well, when he went to Toronto, then went back to the Flyers. And then we didn't see each other for a long time, to be honest with you. And then I went to the 40-year reunion with the 67 Flyers in 2007, and then I saw him then, and we were so happy to see each other. And then this past Saturday, I was in Philadelphia to do a signing with Bernie, and I have not seen him till 2007. It's been 10 years since I've seen him. And then as soon as we saw each other, we hugged each other. We were so happy to see each other. We talked to each other in French for a little bit. We talked to each other in English. And then Bernie still has his big boat down in the Jersey Shore. He said, you need to come and visit me in New Jersey. And he remarried, and he said he's really, really happy. And we couldn't talk enough about, the fact that we miss each other. And then after I came home, I text Bernie to tell him that, it was so nice to see him. I hope we'll stay in touch. And then he texts me back. He says, I love you too. He said, make sure you come and see me down to New Jersey. So, those are the relationships you build over the years. You just don't happen to build them over 1 year or 2 years. So even sometime when you don't see each other, like I told you before too, Mark, we don't see each other that much, or we don't talk to each other that much. I consider you a good friend. And then that's what happened when you build a relationship over the years that you play hockey.
Speaking of, you mentioned something when you talked to Bernie. You said you were talking French to each other a little bit. Did I recall, back when you were with the Flyers, that I think it was Vick Stasiak who at some point prohibited you, Bernie, Rosie Paymont, Siwa Nole from speaking French?
That's a very good story. And that's a true story. What happened is I was with the Flyers. There were Jean-Guy Gendron, Simon Nole, Bernie Perreault, Serge Bernier. There were 5, 6 or 7 of us that was French. And also, we didn't socialize with each other in Philadelphia. Even when we were on the road, we didn't socialize. We didn't go out together. And then I think Vick Stasiak did not like French Canadians because at one point we were having a problem winning, and he called all the French guys in a room, and he said, I don't want you to speak French anywhere. On the bus, anywhere. And I said, oh, my gosh. He said that to us on a Wednesday. On a Friday, we were going to Montreal to play the Canadiens. On Saturday morning, front page of the newspaper, big picture of Vick Stasiak, he won't let his players speak French. Well, if it happened today, we would be banned from hockey.
Right.
Well, they tried to find out who did that. And then Marcel was a scout at the time, came for the pregame skate in the morning. He said, we'll find out who did this, and he won't be here long. Well, eventually they found out that Bernie's the one that told the newspaper about it. Mm-hmm. At the time, Clarence Campbell was president of the National Hockey League. He called Stasiak in, but he never called any of us in to find out if he said it or not. Obviously, Stasiak denied it, but he did say it. And then everything went, dead. That was it. And that's when Bernie got traded to Toronto after that.
Well, it is certainly a different world today, and
it is.
That's often for the better. Now, upcoming, you will be returning to the Hartford area. You'll be part of the
I'm looking forward to it.
Whalers event at the Hartford Yard Goats in late July, and we're looking forward to seeing you as well. It's going to be nice for you to come back, and I know a lot of people are looking forward to seeing you back here. I think the Chuck Caden will be here too as well.
I can't wait to see everybody, and most of the fans. I mean, I tell people, I said, the one thing hockey misses today that we've had in the good days is Booster Club. The Booster Club has been so good for hockey for so many years, and then it came to the point where the game got too expensive, the game got too much for and thank God the Booster Club in Hartford still exists, still promote the Whalers, to be honest with you, and I wish more people would do that.
Absolutely. They've done a great job for charities as well, and they've hung in there all these years later, and I know they and all of us are looking forward to seeing you. So, but Andre, again, always a pleasure, my friend. And we look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Thanks, Mark, and let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andre. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Pro Hockey Alumni Podcast. Be sure to visit us at prohockeyalumni.org. This episode of the PHA Podcast is sponsored by HockeyTournaments.com. If you're looking to play in a tournament or just list your tournament, head over to HockeyTournaments.com.